What we're going to do today, we're going to talk about databases. Uh, Usually you can take a course, two, three, some people make even a professional just knowing databases. I will just introduce the basic concept of database, and we will have an opportunity to talk about it much more in detail when we study Python, more correctly to say really Django. We will use Django to build up databases. So we don't really need a lot of detail that usually people that study databases need. We do all of that from Python. In more advanced sessions, you will see beyond just building regular databases, you can do a lot of stuff with databases. And we'll see even some examples how we use it today in Academy City, in some of the website that we use. So let's start, okay? I'll start sharing my screen. And everybody see my screen? Yeah, guys, everybody see my screen?
Yes, we are seeing.
Okay, wonderful. So let's start with a simple definition of what a database. For now, for us, a database is a collection of a lot of tables. What do I mean by table? Okay, table has rows, okay, like in Excel. This is like really Excel. I'm using is here Excel to demonstrate, and then we'll see some real databases, okay? But a table is a collections, sorry, a database is a collections of tables, and every table made of columns and rows. So let's make an rows. Okay, this is one row, a second. Let's make an example. Let's say we have one table and let's mark it. And let's say I have a column number one, column number two, etc., etc. And let's say we have another table. Okay, some vocabulary, by the way. Just let me move that a little bit. Okay, some vocabulary. Every column also known as a field. Some people call it a field. Okay. Every row also known as a record. Okay. So a row is a record in a table and a column also known as a field. We will use that terminology in the future. And other things. Table can contain any kind of information. So let's say I'm making a table for customers. Let's write here customers, just for example. Okay? And every customer will have a first name. We're going to have last name. And maybe other things. By the way, usually when we naming fields, we usually like to not to leave a space. We'll see it when we use the Python to build up tables. So try not to leave space. So I usually like to write first name and I will leave, let's say, underscore. That will be fine. For many other reasons you will see in the future. Okay, that's a good practice. Why did I leave the first? Why did I leave the first field empty? Because I'm going to write it a little slightly different. And I'm going to write here primary key. Usually we like to write its primary key. Primary key is a column in which I assign a unique identifier for the record. A row is a record, so let's say to identify record number one, I might write number one. Record number 2, I might write number 2, etc. Number 3. Those are identifying every row that it's different than another row. So first row relate to the first customer. Second row relate to the second customer. So number 2, it's a primary key is 2 for record number 2, and etc. Usually we will put numbers from 1 up to whatever, okay? It's known as integer. Integer is a whole number. One other concept that we will deal with when we deal with the databases, we assign type of data, meaning in the primary key, we use usually integers, whole numbers. First name, we use characters. So when we build a table, we will assign a character to be the type of data. Why is it important? Not only will say characters, we might even say to the computer, we're going to use this column to have only up to, let's say, take 10 characters. Why is it important? It make the efficiency, it's make the using the table more efficient. The computer knows how much memory to allocate on the hard disk. Okay? So that's the first step could be 10, 20. Usually many times you put, let's say 20, 30. Okay? And that will tell the computer how much memory to assign on the hard disk for that column, that type of a column. So let's take an example. Let's say customer 1 is Amos Baranes. That's a customer number 2. It's SEO Brenda. Okay, and etc. etc. Okay, that's a Daniel. OP, OP, yo, Daniel.
Yeah, definitely.
Did I spell it right, Daniel?
Yes.
Yes, doctor.
Very good. So this is an example. Now, what's the role of the primary could be? Role number 1 is to distinguish one customer from another. And role number 2 is if I want to talk about Amos, I can say, well, Amos is okay. So I can say Amos is customer number 1. So number 1 is representing the whole record. By the way, I could have written address, I could have written age, etc., etc. I'm not putting all of that just to make the discussion more efficient. And you can imagine I can put a lot of things about the customer itself. Let's take another type of a table, and let's see if you can help me. Okay, let's make another table. I'll just shrink that one, save some space. How about we make a table for items? Okay, like we made for customers, we will make for items. Okay, items like inventory items. By the way, there is some parallel, you know. Every item we would like to distinguish, and we will see, we give a number to items so we can identify them. So we will have a primary key for the items, and usually we'll have a name for the item, and etc. Could be a lot of things. That's the price that we usually price that item when we sell it. So this is another table that we might have. And here too, we can have the item number 1, number 2, number 3, 4, etc. And that gets us to look like a nice table. Okay, let's make another table. And I will mark it. Where's my tables? Here we go. Beautiful. By the way, remembering, primary key here is again, is identifying one item from another. For example, let's say the first one is a mouse. Okay, that we sell, let's say a computer mouse, could be a keyboard, could be, what else? Let's say the computer itself. Okay, computer, etc. Could be a camera, and etc. etc. I can put prices. I don't know. Let's say this is $10. This is $7 or $8. I'm just making it up. Let's say this is 400, and this one could be $50. Okay, I'm just making it up. Again, those tables have a lot of in common in their characteristics. We have a primary key which identify every customer. We have a primary key that identify each item. Okay, and so that's a concept. Those one, each column is a field, and we have a record. Each record is for every record, it's for another item, and here is every record for another customer. Now it becomes to be the interesting part, okay? That I would like to talk about a little bit. Let's say I have a store. I'm making a web page for running a business, and customer come and want to buy those items. How would I document it? And there is a efficient way to do it. First of all, I don't want to repeat information that I already have. It's in another tables. And to do it in efficiency, let's take an example and follow up many rules. And we'll learn uh, some more vocabulary. And you will see we're using all of those stuff. I will demonstrate a little bit, and we will see it again when we get to Python. I will show you examples, but we'll review it again when we study Python. Let me make another table. I'll just insert some columns here, and let me make, let's just skip a little space here, and let's make those one to be another table. Sorry. Okay, let's say I want to make a table now to document all the invoices that somebody that come to the store and buy for me. So in another word, let's say that I would like every time that Amos come, I want to open an invoice for him. And in the invoice, I want to put all the items. How would I do it? So one, I will make a table of invoices. And every time that Amos come, I open an invoice number. By the way, we usually put a primary cursor for the invoices. So let's write here a primary key. And the primary key, you can think about it, that every record here will represent an invoice, okay, that I issue to each one of the customers whenever they come. So let's say the first time, if not Amos came, let's say we started a week ago, we opened the store, and the first one was Daniel Opio. And Daniel came to the store, and he wanted to buy some items. So I'm opening an invoice for him, and he taking the invoice number one. Now I want to be very efficient in my writing, and it's so important. Let me say one more thing. An integer, a whole number, take very little memory. So that's why we keep a primary key to be integers. Now, when I'm writing number one here is a number of invoice number one. Very efficient, doesn't take much memory. I want to document who is the customer. So I can, I can give it different names. Customary to write, let's say customer, or you can just write the letter C, or customer, or cast, whatever. And you can write primary key. That means it will tell me who is the customer number that came and got the invoice number one. If Daniel was the first customer that got the first invoice, I will use number three. See already the efficiency in doing it this way. I don't have to repeat his name, first name, last name, and if I had address and a lot of information, I don't have to repeat it. Why? I always can look up what 3 means in the customer table. 3 means Daniel, Opio Daniel. So all the information is already here. I don't have to repeat it. It's enough to write just the number 3. And we say there is a link between those two tables. Which kind of a link? And more correctly, I can say between the column of this primary key to this column in this table. By the way, I can already immediately can say it would be very wrong if in the invoice table in the cost per PK, I would have a number that doesn't exist in the primary key column in the customer table. I cannot sell to somebody that is not a customer. So I have to have some rules about the customer key here relative to this column. By the way, to this one, as I said before, it's a primary key. This one has another one, this one called a foreign key. A foreign key, I don't know really what this name comes from, but it means really it's relating. This column is relating to another foreign key in another table. By the way, it doesn't have to be always in another table, as we will get there, or whoever will work with me on accounting software one day, application, we will use primary key and a foreign key to be on the same table to generate what is known as a parent-child relationship. Please just keep it in mind. Nothing happened if you didn't really understand that last sentence. We will get to that. For now, we always will deal with examples that the foreign key will refer to a primary key in another template. As I said before, I never will have a number in this column that does not exist here because it doesn't make any sense. So I can tell between primary key to in the table of customers to the cost PK column or field in the invoice, there is a relationship. This one is a primary key. This is a foreign key. We'll see more about that relationship in a minute as we progress. Okay? Now, you will ask yourself, okay, what else I can put here? I can put the date, the date of the invoice, etc., etc., etc. A lot of things that tells me about that invoice. By the way, if I have a chain of stores, I can write the number of the store as well. Usually I'll make another table of stores. Every store will have a number, a primary key, and I'll just put the primary key. Which store did Daniel buy from? Okay, but let's not complicate things in this point. I will get to that in the future. So let's say it came in July 1st, 2021. Okay, that's the date that he made the purchase. Why don't like me? I think it's a formatting. It put the whole thing. By the way, as you can tell, I'm not using a regular Excel. I'm using the Ubuntu Excel. This is a free, by the way, everything's on that we use. They are used by really professional companies around the world. And most of them, if not all of them, are free. This is like Excel, and it's a beautiful free Excel on Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a Linux operating system. Okay. Now, one more thing. Okay, which items did Daniel purchase? Daniel purchased several things. What did he buy? So let's put another table here in the middle. I'll use 2 columns and we'll see later on if we need more. So I will insert column to the right and let me just make those 2 smaller and let's use even 3 columns. That's okay. And we'll shrink it a little bit. So we can see all the tables at the same time. Okay, so what do we have so far? We have a table for customers, We have a table for the items in the inventory. Every invoice that we issue, we put in this table. And now we want another table. In this table, we want to put the items, but pay attention. This is the table of the inventory. We could even call it inventory if you want. But this one, it's the items that people actually have purchased. Okay, so how about we call it items in invoice or invoice? By the way, you're noticing I'm trying not to keep spaces. Okay, many times, really, in fact, the truth of the matter, tables name we put capital letter, and that's the way we usually name them in Python. Okay, I'll give real examples, and when we get to Python, as I said before, we will see more, and we're repeating this material. Don't be intimidated if it looks like too much in one time, because it is. As I said, people taking several courses to learn all of that. The beautiful thing is that as we do that, you will see you really don't need to. Okay, and the senior student can tell you that we're doing a lot of that, much more sophisticated than this example, and we don't need to take courses in databases. And that's the beauty of Python and the new type of programming. Okay, what do we have in invoice? Okay, one thing I would like is to write all the items that I buy. By the way, I will put here also a primary key. That means for every row, I will have a number. Okay, that's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It would be a sequence. Okay, it's like in the invoices, I will have invoice number 2, 3, 4, etc. And we'll see, we'll give more example. Okay, I will talk about how it's done in real life, that the computer can help me to do that automatically. Okay, so what did Daniel buy? Okay, Daniel has, okay, is a customer number 3, but his invoice number is number 1. By the way, here I will write now invoice or a primary key of invoice. And here I will write that in invoice number 1 that happened to belong to Daniel, which is customer number 3, Daniel have purchased, and let's put here item. I will do ITPK just to distinguish from invoice. That's for the item. What did Daniel buy? Let's say Daniel bought a computer. So he purchased number 3 in here. He purchased number 3 item. And number 3 is a camera. By the way, usually in invoice, we'll add another one here just to make it, and we'll add another column to be for the price. Let's put a price here. Why did I do that? I would like that. Okay, let's put price here. By the way, this is the price that actually Daniel buy. It might be a little different than the 400 if I give him a discount. We won't get into that because that's not the objective of this one. In a real life, you might take it into account as well. But if the price is 400, even you can write a program that automatically, when I type it through here, it will take this number and put it here automatically. So he paid, let's say 400. Now look at the beautiful things here. We don't really have any characters in those two tables. By the way, those are big tables. The biggest table that will happen in real life, it's this table. Because I will have a lot of items. Let's say Daniel have purchased in the same invoice, Daniel that had invoice number 1, you have purchased another thing, not just a computer. You also bought a mouse and a keyboard, okay? He bought a computer, he bought a keyboard and a mouse. So that's it will be, item number 1, and item number 1 cost $10. And he also, in the same invoice, he purchased also item number 2, and he purchased that for $8. This is his invoice. And the beauty here, you see everything is only numbers. By the way, a date in the computer behind the screen, it is a number. Okay. One day we'll talk about it more detail in really more advanced classes. Okay. For now, just take it as a date behind the screen. By the way, the computer, what it does, it take a date like 1950, 19, uh, 1900, the 19th century, 1950 is number one. And every day from there is adding one. And when you see those numbers, it really isn't an integer behind. It's just the formatting, it's different. Okay? But that's just a comment. So you can say that those two tables, which could be very big, they are only numbers. And why numbers? And why this design is so efficient? Because it takes much less memory on the hard disk and it works extremely fast. So databases, and the one we're dealing with is called relational databases. I started explaining that this is relational database. Why we call it relational? Because the table relate to each other. We saw this relationship. One we saw already before. We said that customer number, we put it here. So there is a relationship between this column to this column. Moreover, we also have a relationship between this column and this column. Very similar. Here I'm putting the number of the invoice that every item belongs to, the items that Daniel have purchased. So this column relate to this column. This is a primary key, and that's a foreign key to that column. Moreover, this column also relate to this column. This is a primary key. We have one number to each item, and this column relate to this column. So this one again, this is a foreign key. So we have a foreign key pointing to this primary key, and we have another foreign key relating to this primary key. Then, so we see there is a relationship between those tables. And that's immediately, as I said before, create rules. I will never have a number here that doesn't exist already in this table because it doesn't make sense. I cannot sell items that I don't have an inventory. Okay? Moreover, I cannot sell an item without an invoice. I have to attach it to a specific invoice. And this time I assigned those three items to Daniel. How do I know Daniel? They are all assigned to invoice number one, and invoice number one belong to Daniel. That's why relational database deal with a lot of tables and they have a lot of relation. This is a very nice classical example. I use it all the time to expand those concepts. And let's look at more definition. We defined already that from this primary key to this foreign key, we have a foreign key relationship. By the way, I will hold a second. I will give one more example and then we'll talk about a type of relationships, okay? Let's take another example. Let's say that the following or the same day, Brenda also came to the store and Brenda is customer number two. And she came on the same day. By the way, it would be easy here in Excel. I can just copy the date. I gave the second day. I'll change it. I want to put the same day just for the example. It doesn't matter really. Okay, invoice number two belongs to Brenda. What did Brenda buy? Everything that Brenda buy will be a number two here because that's her invoice number. Let's say if she bought the whole things I have in the invoice. I might have a lot of items. I just made a few of them. Okay, so I can put really number 4, 5, 6, 7. This just gives me one number to every record. By the way, theoretically, you don't have to, but in real life, you do. And in the future, I'll give example that it could be a mistake not to put this one, although it looks like I don't really have to, but it will be clearer as we go along. Okay, for now, let's just make every table to have a primary key. It's a good rule. By the way, as we will see in Django, the rule is it will put a primary key automatically for every table you make. Okay, and there's a very good reason for that. Okay, Brenda purchased everything. So she purchased the mouse, the keyboard, the computer, and the camera. Fair enough. So she paid here, let's say $10, $8. Oops, sorry, $10, $8. The computer 400 and $50. Okay, now we ask ourselves, oh, what a nice. We have also relationship between invoice number two that belongs to Brenda. It just happened to be that the invoice number and the customer number are the same number, but it doesn't mean anything. Invoice number two has all those four items because I have a link between this column to this column. And number two here refer to all those items. Now I want to talk about type of definitions of some concept. There is some relationship, if you notice, every invoice, let's say Brenda's invoice, can have several items. This kind of a relationship between tables in which one record can relate to several records in another table, we call it one-to-many relationship. Let me write it. Okay, one type is one to many relationship. The relationship between the invoice table to the item invoice, or I can call it invoice items. Maybe invoice item would be a better name. It doesn't really make a difference. It's really what makes you feel comfortable. So I would call it invoice. I don't know. It just sounds better for me. Invoice items. It means the items in the invoice, okay? So the relationship between the invoice table to the invoice items, it's one to many because every record in the invoice can have several records. For the records of Danielle, I have three records. The record of Brenda, I have four records. And I take another example, let's say Amos 2, it came the following day. Amos is a customer number one. I'm issuing invoice number three, and he come the following day. And I'm issuing him an invoice. In his invoice, Amos have, by the way, invoice number three now. That will be, let's say I just bought a camera. So I just bought number four. Okay, and I purchased 50. So that's the next record, number 8. And so for Amos, it's true. For my invoice, I have only one, but I could have purchased several of them, correct? I could have purchased, if I purchase also a mouse, let's say I forgot, and I have also a mouse, okay, that case, my invoice will have two items. That will be invoice number one, item number one, and I will have 10. This is really beautiful. By the way, you usually don't enter data by hand. You'll have nice screens. Remember what we learned last time? We have the presentation layer. We make screens to enter data and view data. And when we enter data, it will go to the logical layer, and we learn that in the future. The logical layer put the data into the database. So everything I'm doing here by hand is just to teach database as a standalone. Later on, we will see how do we really enter the data in the process I just described. Okay, so let's look at another more relationship. Okay, so we can say that between invoice number three to the invoice items, we have two items. So it's really many to many, one to many I have. What do I mean by what just I said now? Many to many. That will be the next one, and I want to explain that. many to many. I didn't really say that up to now. And let's see what I mean by that. If I were to ask you how many items could be an invoice, you already know. Invoice number one, I have three items. That means I have one too many. From invoices to items, I really have one too many. Let us this now from the other side. Is item number one can appear in more than one invoice? Can item number one in this table can appear more than once? What do you say? Anybody? What do you say, Liam?
3 times.
Yeah? Is that Liam? Liam, what do you say? Can item number one appear
Yes,
more than once in here?
3 times.
yes,
Beautiful. Three times, correct. Yes. So as I said, from the invoice to the invoice item, it's one too many. Can I say from the item to the invoice table items, is that also one too many? The answer is yes. Every record here can appear several times in this table. Simply, many people coming and buying the same item. I'm selling invoice to, let's see, who did I sell invoice? A mouse. I sold it to Daniel, is that right? To how would I know that? That's getting complex. It will go to invoice number one, correct? And invoice number one belongs to number three. So to Daniel, I sold the mouse. And I sold another mouse here. To whom? To invoice number two. To whom it belongs, invoice number two? To customer number two. Who is customer number two? Oh, it's Brenda. Who else did I sell the mouse? Oh, I saw the mouse here too. Which invoice number three? Invoice number three belongs to customer number one. Who is customer number one? Is Amos. So I sold, as somebody said before correctly, I sold it three times. So the relationship between this table to this table is also one to many. The one to many come from the right side to the left side. This is really from this table to this table. Okay, from this column to this column. So I have from this column to this column, I see one too many. Okay, for every item here, it can appear several times. From this table to this table, again, for every invoice, I can have the invoice several times in this column. So I have one too many in this direction. I have one too many in this direction. And what it does, that between invoices and items, I have what is known many to many. Why is it called many to many? For the reason is that for any invoice, I have many items that can appear in the invoice items. And for every item, it can appear in many invoices. So the relationship between invoices to items is many to many. Very important concept. We will use it a hell of a lot. Okay? Okay, I will just talk about another type of the last type of relationship, and then I will demonstrate. And that will be for today. We learn a hell of a lot. Okay, in many new concepts we learn in the future. I'm going to add another table. By the way, it's very common. In fact, I will give an example later on. I use it in Academy City website. Okay. By the way, let's add some more columns here. Okay. Let's say for some reason, somebody already made this table and physically, let's say it could be that totally some other company. I bought an application from another company. I bought data from another company. Whoever study machine learning with me, you will see we many times we get data from many sources. And I want to add colors, but I cannot really do it physically just because I don't have an access to this table, or I don't really want to touch it originally. But I would like to extend the information. Let's say I have, let's say even make it really like that. It would look nicer even. Where's the lead column? Anybody see the lead column? Here we go. Okay? I have only first name, last name, but I really don't like it. I would like to extend the customer table. So I'm adding another table here. And this one, I want it to be like extensions, or I can call it a additional customers. By the way, I don't like the naming like that. I usually already, you will see, I'm very picky on the way names of tables. Customers, info, for information. So what happened? Okay, I want another table. And what I really want in here, I want, let's say, the address. What happened to me? Doesn't like me. Address. I want to add the phone. That won't be wise. So I'm going to delete the address from here. I'm going to put something else there in a second. Address. And I want to put there, what else do I have about customers? What do you say? I can put anything that I want. Let's I want to add just telephone and address. Okay? Fair enough. By the way, I can put a category. Is it a good customer? Is it platinum customer? Is a gold customer? Whatever. Or let's say type. I can add a type. Okay. I want to extend the raw or the record of Amos to add more information. And I want to create a link between this record to this record. So I will put here again primary key. This time, for record number 1 here, I'll put exactly the same number. That way I will know that the record number 1 in additional customer info, I wrote here, I don't like it, info, it shouldn't have the R here. And I think I should put it singular, make more sense. Info, let me take the S as well. Okay, so I have for customer number 1, I want to extend the information. So I'm adding here the number 972 54427. By the way, this is my correct number 9186. Okay, that's my number. And this one is nothing but extending my record here. I can write my address, Netanya. That's my city, and I'm gold customer for whatever reason. I can extend Brenda, number 2, and if I'm extending the data for Daniel, I will number 3. In another word, this table is nothing but kind of, I could have combined them as one table. Okay, the only reason I might keep them as a separate tables, one of the main reasons, there's many reasons you might do that, but the only reason, one of the reasons is that you don't have an access. Another reason in efficiency, if I do queries or search, and I don't want to bring all the data from this table. Maybe the only things I'm interested is first name and last name. So I don't need to pull the whole data. If there will be one table, the whole table has to go to the memory, and that will take more time. But that's detail, and as we go along in the course, I will emphasize. But usually, it's if you don't have any physical extension. This type of a relationship between this table to this table, it's known as one-to-one relationship. Very, very important. Okay? So what did we learn a lot? What we learned today? One, that we're going to deal with database that called relational database. In the relational database, we have a lot of tables. Here it's a very small example. Okay, so we have a lot of tables. The tables have relationship between them. Which kind of relationship we have between tables? there are three types of relationship. In order to define those relationships, we have to define primary keys and we have to define foreign keys in a table. For example, for the customers, we have a primary key for customer number. For invoices, we have a primary key for invoice number. Okay? For the items we define, we have a primary key for every item. Here, by the way, you could theoretically, you really don't need that one. And then you can say the combination of those two could be a primary key. In my review, I'm entering a new definition of primary key. Primary key usually will be one column. Theoretically, you can have a combinations of two columns as long as the two together will be unique along the whole table, they can constitute a primary key. I usually don't do it, and I have a lot of bad experience of doing that mistake. In another sessions, I will talk about it. I usually put a separate primary key. That's a primary key for invoice items. Although the combination of the two is unique in this table, it always will be unique. I always will put a primary key here. Okay, so primary key is a very important to have in every table. How do I define? Let's start from the one to many we started. We said for every customer, it can have, by the way, it can have several invoices in it. If Daniel come again, okay, a week later, so I can issue him another invoice. So from customer table to the invoices, it's one to many, because every customer can have several invoices if he comes several times to the store. So that's one to many. That's what we learned first relationship. And the relationship is between the primary key to the foreign key. Okay? Then we said many to many. And we saw the example in many to many. It's we have between the invoices table to the items tables. Between the invoices table to this table, we have one to many. Every invoice can have several items, like this example. And for every item, let's say item number 2, can appear several times in the table. So we have one to many from this direction. We have one to many to this direction. So therefore, from the invoices to the items, it's known as many to many relationship. Let me add another concept, okay? And this table that's sitting in the middle between the invoices and the items have a special name. This table known as a bridge table. Oops, sorry. Bridge table. Okay? Why is it known as a bridge table? It's a bridge between the invoices and the items. Very important. You cannot have many to many relationship, by the way, unless you have a bridge table in the middle. Python have excellent way to create even a standalone bridge table. I usually don't use it a lot because I go around it, okay? I always create, let's say, one to many from here to here, one to many from here to here. Python is smart enough, okay, to allow me to have kind of a bridge table between the two, okay? So I can make a table and I many times create one to many, and therefore this is automatically is a bridge table. I could define, by the way, in Python, I don't use it much, the relationship directly between the invoices to the items. And Python will be smart enough to create this table automatically for me, okay? And we will learn it when we study Python, okay? So, and last concept we learned today, which is one-to-one, when we want to extend a table, we can add another table, And this table will have a relationship to this table. Every record here, it's related to another record. Only one-to-one. I cannot have one record relate to several records here. That will not be one-to-one. So one-to-one, it's only this way. Let me give examples, real one we use in our Academy City. In fact, let me show you the projects that Daniel is working on it, Brenda, Mildred, all the senior students. This is really all projects that they're really managing. Let's look at the one that, which one do you guys like? Should we take Jeremiah? Jeremiah, is that okay? I will use yours. Is Jeremiah with us?
No, he's not with us.
Okay, so who we should use? Who is volunteering? How about you, Brenda? You want to volunteer?
Yes.
Economics.
Or how about, doesn't matter really. Which one we worked the last one? Which one was the last one we worked on? We worked on all of them. Let's see, whatever will be the, that's Uganda towns. That's yours. Which one? Here we go. There's a lot of projects here. Who did the Feb house? I think it was Daniel, isn't it? Daniel?
Yes, doctor.
Okay, let's look at this one, okay? Real life. And by the way, this is the website. You can see it here, okay? If you go to Academy City, you type Academy City and right after that, okay, you just type, right, you change the E in the end to a F. You can see really the website. You can go online and see it, okay? Why do I get an error, Daniel? Hey, Daniel.
Doctor.
Yeah, I need to remove the EN. Is that the way I should do it? Now I'm getting an error. Why, Daniel?
I think they set up. I've never set it up.
Ah, you didn't do this. Okay. So should I use maybe the, which one should I use? How about I give you sharing? Go ahead. Share your screen and show it to everybody. What do you say? Let me stop and you will, yeah, I don't know why. I thought it's working. It surprises me. Why is the setup, Daniel? Okay, you have something to work on. But let's take another one. Let's see, how about the C? Okay. Hey, by the way, this is a good one. In fact, let's do this one. How about the cash? Is that right? We have one. How is that called? Cash, checks. Is that right? Near me?
Yes.
But we can't see your screen.
Yeah, what is it?
Doctor.
We can't see your screen.
Near me. I want to use a real one. .com. The one that we did already. Did I
We
misspell
can't see
it?
your screen.
Go ahead, cash. Yeah, here we go. I think this is it, isn't it? Correct. This is a real website. You can go online and see it. Okay?
Doctor, we can't see your screen.
Oh, sorry. My mistake. It looks like I do.
We're not seeing the screen.
Okay, I'm going to see why. Yeah, it seems like it got crazy on me, and that's maybe why it didn't work. It should work now. I don't know what happened. Here we go. Do you see it now? You see my
Yes.
screen now?
Yes.
Okay. You see, this is a website, a real one, of one of a business in Chicago, and it's a real website that we developed. Okay, a real one. You know, you click here. By the way, this is the main page. You click on a location. They have several locations. You click on the location, and it open up another page. I need a relationship. There's a relationship between. By the way, you can see the main page. This is the main page. Okay, this is the main page. It has several locations. So for one main page, I can have different locations, correct? So there should be a relationship one to many somewhat. So let's look at the database of this one, okay? Let's show it how it's really designed. By the way, this is really right here. Let's go to the, where do we put the cache, by the way? Daniel, here we go. I think it's Jeremiah and you, Daniel. Is that right? You worked on that one?
Yes, doctor.
Okay. So let's look. We have in Python, don't worry about the left side. We'll have starting next week, we will talk about Python. I'm just showing you that everything we learned today, we will implement in real life and also in a lot of examples that I will show you. By the way, each one of those, it's a definition of a table. Look at that. This table is huge, have so many columns. Every row is a definition of a column. We will learn it. Don't get scared, okay? The only things I want to emphasize, okay, that by the way, this store has several regions, and every regions, okay, in every regions can have, by the way, you can see location regions. You know, every store belongs to a different location. So everything is, by the way, this is the data. Okay, this is the table for defining every location. This is a location. This is a location. And what I mean by the definition, by the way, this is a real life, immediate implementation in real life. You know, when I have this location, I have a picture, I have a definition of the title, the address, a telephone, a phone, a fax, you know, all of that information has to be kept somewhere and it's being kept in the database. How do I define the database? I do it with Python. That will be not next week. It will be about 3 weeks from now. We have to study Python first. Then we will use Python to show you how do we define like a table. You can't really jump to this one immediately. So we will learn about those rules. What does it mean class? What does it mean? All of those definitions. We will learn in Python. After we learn that, we will understand why this one in Django, it's a way we define database. I just want to show you several words. You see the word foreign key? It's a little small. This one helped me to show relationship, let's say from this table to a table called check cache caching web, which is really the table above, one above. Okay, so there is a relationship between this table to this table. Just here it looks totally different. Okay, the only things I want to show you that everything we learn, a foreign key, it's something we will use. And the beauty about Python / Django, making our life so easy, we don't have to do all of that in the database. We will do it in Python, and Python will create those tables for us the way we want. Moreover, this one, it's a date, it's a special column. This one, it's characters. If you have a good eye, it's a little small, but we're defining columns. This is like one that has only whole numbers, it's an integer. This one, by the way, a special column we can put images, and we will learn it in the future. I just wanted to say, everything we learned today, every concept we learned today, we will use. And that's what's special about our courses. We don't study things you don't need to do your job as a software engineer or someone that works in relating to software engineering. It's very important. You can spend 3-4 years and you'll forget 90% of it, but everything we study all along the course and next courses if you take, it's useful, okay? Everything we'll use. And I just wanted to demonstrate. That's for today. Anybody have questions, guys? Senior students, did I forget anything?
Doctor.
Did I?
No.
No?
I don't think so.
Okay, didn't I forget any concept? Something that you have done and I forgot?
Not really. You've pretty much gone through everything.
Beautiful.
So that's
So let me stop I don't know why it doesn't stop. It's got stuck for some reason. I can't stop the session, but I'll wait in a second Okay, so I just wanted to say goodbye to everyone. And if anyone can turn on his video, I would appreciate so I can see you guys. What do you say?
I think Miriam has a question, doctor.
Go ahead, Miriam.
I see a hand raised.
Go ahead.
So, okay, doctor, I have a question.
Yeah.
Is anyone getting me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Yes.
Yeah. First, go back to the table.
To the table here.
Yeah.
Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Yeah, I don't know why it gave me a hard time. Let me.
It's okay. Then
No, hold
I
on.
wanted to ask about the
It usually
primary
doesn't
key.
happen. Hold a second, sweetie. Just a second. For some reason, it doesn't like me. I don't know why. It's giving me a hard time on the sharing. Let me try to cheat him a little bit. Just a second. Let me see if it will be nice now. No, it doesn't like me. Why it doesn't like me? Video stop. Nope. Sorry about it. I apologize. I don't want to disconnect everyone and have everyone connecting. So go ahead. I'm listening.
It's okay. I was asking about the primary key of each table. So
Yes.
I wanted to understand if like a primary key, as you said, is a unique identifier. Can we use like for the customer, we use like the customer ID instead of just putting a primary key, or it is just like we should write the primary key as you have shown us, or you can bring any unique identifier in each table?
Very good question, by the way. By the way, you could, I will even extend your question. It's a really good one. You say, Amos, you said primary key is identifying every customer. It's identifying every record, okay? And is that can be used as a primary key and also as an customer number. Some things I can do about invoice is the primary key in the invoice, I made it to be like also the invoice number. Does it have to be the same one? Or I can have two columns. Both of them will have to be unique, but do I have, or can I do that? And by the way, you can see in many invoices, you might have a letter, A100 or A200, B300, and it have also characters. And I said, primary key is always an integer, a whole number. So many times you will see people designing invoice table, they will put two columns. One will be the primary key and one will be for invoice. And they will write the program in such a way that both of them will be always unique. Okay? Now, the good things about primary key is we're using a database. And in fact, most of the databases, they will put the primary key automatically for you. Let me show, you can't see my screen, but I'll show it next week, okay? It's you can tell the computer build up for me a table that the primary key will be filled up automatically. It will make sure that always will be a new whole number in the primary key. So to answer your question is, many times you can use the primary key to be like the customer number or the invoice number. Many times in a real application, people use two columns. And why do you need two columns? Just that the primary key, you use it in a lot of statistical application in the future. You ignore the invoice number by itself and it will work much faster. That's the only reason why people might do that. Okay? I hope I answered your question. Anyone else?
Yes.
Anyone? Becker, do you have any question? Go ahead, Becker. Becker, don't be shy.
No, I don't have any question.
You can ask me how do I feel.
I'm okay with everything.
Good, very happy. Salah, you doing good?
Good, I'm good.
Very good. Laura? Laura?
I'm okay.
Oh, you know, I just something
Yes.
came up to my mind. My God, we were talking about it the other day and I forgot Laura. You know, Brenda, Laura is also an economist. I forgot it. I apologize, Laura. I talked to
Doctor.
Brenda. By the way, Brenda have done a program that is the Uganda economics. This is the project that she has done. Let me see that.
Doctor.
Yeah. Can you hear? Ah, you
Doctor?
can, yeah, you can see my screen. My God, I can't believe it. I don't remember it's ever happened to us. And I'm using my good computer, so I don't really. Okay, I will show it next week. Okay, but I just wanted to say, Laura, Brenda is also an economist, and Brenda is joining me now on developing the corporate valuation simulation. It's a simulation that I'm building. It will be eventually for analysts that want to invest in the stock market in the US or anywhere in the world. If that's something interest of you as we go along, let me know. Brenda will be very happy to have you join our team working on that direction. But take your time. You're just starting now. I just wanted to
Interesting
just make a
me.
comment that we have two economists. Well, we have three economists. Let me make another column. Salah is an accountant. He's a CPA. He's a certified public accountant in Israel. So he's also with a good background in finance and accounting. Okay, so and we will see. We'll talk about other type of people. And thank God, as we're growing, the type of people that joining us is getting diverse. Michael is not with us now. He is finishing his electrical engineering, and hopefully we'll get a lot of type of special application that we will develop with the tools you are learning. Liam, for example, I know is interested in machine learning. By the way, Liam, I taught the sequence in Ivory Coast, the whole sequence of machine learning. So hopefully this time you'll have the chance. We'll open also in Uganda machine learning, and machine learning is on top of it. Okay, guys, thank you. Unless anybody else has more questions. Thank you. See you next week. By the way, Wednesday is from now on. I just teach in another place on Thursday, so I apologize. We had to move it to Wednesday. Thank you. See you next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Have a good
Welcome.
Bye.
one. Bye, guys.